Hello everyone, hope everybody had a great 4th and you've been able to recover after your 4th of July activities as well as the World Cup and the big loss this week. So in the readings this week, it talks about in chapter 3 that it wasn't until the 1970s that soccer began to gain its popularity among white middle class families in the U.S. And even now it's still seen as a sport that on the professional level struggles financially, and it's working towards a national identity, because here we look at it as an international sport still. Growing up, for me personally, I grew up in a town that soccer was the sport to play, and it was basically a white middle class type of suburban area that I grew up in, and actually our boys soccer coach was the famous Tony DeChico, and his family is raised there. So we were very familiar with soccer and how important it was to people, and we had some really great opportunities for students to play at a young age at a competitive level. In many countries, I think it's a drinking sport, whereas many sports are here as well. In fact, I think most of the people that I've seen posting on Facebook were happy that the U.S. lost, because it was in that it only happens every 4 years, because it was just causing such great excitement, and all the additional going out and spending money and drinking and hanging out in a bar and celebrating became excessive. So they're happy it only happens every 4 years. I think it's a bandwagon sport in the U.S. because when the U.S. lost, I think many people were purchasing their Brazil jerseys and just moving on. Whereas if our favorite baseball team or football team lost in the Super Bowl or something, it affects them a lot more on a greater level. In the United Kingdom, it's very different. Many teams are geographically located closer to each other than even Yankee Stadium or Citi Field, where the Mets play, are here. So if you grew up a supporter of Manchester, your allegiance would never change to them. And sometimes here, I think people do change, and they'll go for another sports team for one reason or another, a marriage or a family or friends, social reasons, obviously, or just because they want to be supporting a winning team. Everybody wants to see their team win every once in a while and go to the playoffs. I think the level of support that there is in the UK is beyond anything that we experience in sporting events here, because we have so many options of sports to choose from, where that is just such a big sport for them there, and especially in the smaller countries where there aren't a lot of other sports that are played. I think outside of playing sports and being a fan, there's so much more to the social world that can be experienced and expanded on when we talk about the social issues around the World Cup. The family ties, for example, that extend outside of the family through sport camaraderie, the unfriendly turf that can develop when a group or individual supports the opposition, gangs and such, riots and fights over the loss. We've seen such incidents where when countries have lost, that players have committed suicide or been, threatened to be killed by fans. So it's certainly something that is much more than maybe here. I don't think we experience that here as much with professional sports that we have here. Another thing that really has a social impact is gambling. People lose their lifetime savings, their fortunes, and their homes and their families over gambling on sports. And that's something that can be included in something like the World Cup when people are gambling. I think the analogy that I have for it is what the World Cup brings is a sense of that we are all seeking to score that same goal or save that goal from being scored. And that's the same thing that we're fighting over in our battles within our own country, both politically and economically, and against the battles that we have with other countries. So I think it's interesting that this topic, the World Cup, is something that we all share some sort of sense of pride in, and something that we hold dear to our hearts, and so much that we'll go to battle for it. So look forward to seeing everybody next week and listening to your own recordings. Have a great night.